So, I'm in a self-reflective mood recently, especially since I just finished watching Castlevania Nocturne, a show with a ton of vampires, and that got me thinking about the first time I tried to run a real, full-blown, story-driven Dungeons & Dragons campaign, using D&D's resident vampire module, Curse of Strahd, and naturally, it went horribly and became my worst horror story that I've ever endured inside of a tabletop role-playing game. Look, it was mostly because of a single problem player, but also I made a lot of mistakes when dealing with that problem player. I've talked about this a couple times on the channel, but here on Crispy's Academy, this is a brand new channel. I've never talked about this before, and I wanted to bring it back because I think there were a lot of really valuable lessons for me to learn when it came to dealing with this problem player, and hopefully you can learn some lessons about dealing with problem players in your own campaign too. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, let's borrow this one from Critical Failure. What the hell happened? For my Curse of Strahd game, I invited a player, we'll call him Wizard, because guess what? He played a wizard. Shock and awe, I know. But he was a really interesting guy outside of the game. He was part of our friend group, but he had shown a lot of red flags before the game even started. He had a problem with losing. Like, he really didn't like losing in anything. I beat him in a debate one time, like a school debate in class. It didn't mean anything, wasn't even worth any points. We both got good credit for it, so it didn't matter, but he wouldn't let go of the fact that I beat him for months afterwards. He got bitter over losing Super Smash Bros. Games. This guy just did not love losing. And that caused him to sort of push people away sometimes because you can't win all the time, and people generally don't like really bitter other people. But despite that, I invited him to my game because he was one of the only people to show any sort of interest, and I really wanted players to get this thing off the ground. And at first, everything was relatively okay. He played a necromancer wizard who wanted to create an undead army so he could take back his kingdom from a black dragon. Cool story, legitimately. It's a really cool long-term backstory that could have wider implications for the campaign. However, throughout the actual campaign, he would use that story to justify some pretty foolish things. Like, for example, constantly trying to betray the party for Strahd. He framed it like, oh, it's not that bad of a thing. Strahd's not evil from my point of view, but like, dude, it's Strahd. He would do this at least 2 to 3 times, and the other players were getting really sick of it. He also constantly disparaged me as the dungeon master, made fun of my voice acting on at least 3 occasions, which I know it doesn't happen that often, but it really hurt every single time that happened because I was really putting myself out there. He would complain, naturally, if any fight was even a little bit hard, even complaining before a fight even started when I put werewolves in front of them because he was convinced that werewolves would absolutely ruin the D&D party because obviously they can transfer lycanthropy. On top of that, the other players were getting sick of him to the point where they were telling me, like, yeah, dude, we are getting sick of this guy. It's getting annoying. I just want to kill his bird familiar. Stuff like that. People were getting irritated. And when I tried to talk to him about it, he would deflect and start talking about League of Legends lore and trying to get me to integrate said League of Legends lore into the campaign. Yeah. Alright, so that's all not great. I made a whole 22-minute video about this guy, and he would actually return to my life in a pretty bad way later on, but that's all the D&D stuff that really matters. So, this player was obviously not ideal for my game, and the campaign ended up tanking, in no small part due to his involvement. And I did a lot of things wrong in handling this whole situation, so let's get started with my first lesson. Alright, lesson 1. Dude, I needed to pay attention to red flags early. This guy was showing me who he was on his sleeve. He wasn't some master manipulator who hid his true nature from me until the moment was just right. Like, no, this is a dude who complained loudly if you beat him in a Super Smash Bros. Game. Like, just a casual match over lunch. Like, seriously? That's the kind of guy that you want to have in your D&D game? No. If he can't handle losing in a Super Smash Bros. Game, how is he going to handle, oh, I don't know, his player character dying, which is not completely out of the ordinary in the Curse of Strahd campaign. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if his wizard character ended up biting the dust. That aftermath would have been horrific. On top of that, I didn't really like hanging out with this guy. By the time I invited him to my campaign, we had grown pretty far apart. The only reason I invited him was just because I needed more players, but that's not really a reason to invite someone that doesn't really act as your friend. Even early on when the campaign was starting, during the first few sessions, he was already showing some main character syndrome, stealing scenes from other players. Hell, the whole thing where he disparaged my voice acting as the dungeon master, he did the same thing with the other players, and none of them had ever roleplayed before. Hell, they were barely even trying to roleplay early on, yet he was pushing the bard to do the horny bard stereotype and seduce this random lady crying at a bar, which... honestly, now that I say that out loud, that's really friggin' gross. And that was in the second session. How is that not a reason that I should pull this guy aside? I was ignoring all these problems because of a lot of different reasons, but most notably because I just didn't think they were that big of a deal. Clearly, it did have an effect. It was a problem. I just kept on downplaying it because I wanted the campaign to go smoothly. But downplaying these things, pushing it to the side, that is a big reason why the campaign got nuked. Speaking of pushing things to the side, I also should have been paying attention to another thing. God, the other players were directly telling me, hey, dude, this guy is getting really annoying. And I kept on telling them, I'll talk to him. And there were many times where they would kind of back down. When they realized I actually did want to talk to this guy, there were times where my players would go, it's really not that big of a deal. It's not something to worry about. But the point I'm trying to make is my players, while they were criticizing, they were also trying to protect my feelings as well as the feelings of this problem player. And I understand that, but that doesn't mean a conversation shouldn't be had at all. I absolutely should have been paying attention to how my players were acting at the table. People were starting to show up less and less because this guy was present there and acting like a nuisance. That should have been the immediate sign like, okay, yeah, I gotta deal with this. And yes, there were communication errors all the way through. I still have largely the same D&D party, and we have discussed these problems as a group. We've gotten a lot better with communication, but at this time, we were brand new to this game. We weren't really good on that end, so there were things that were lost in translation. And that resulted in a lot of gridlock when it came to actually solving this problem. But I was the dungeon master. It's on me to take action when I see an issue. And in this case, I let that gridlock catch me too. I let myself get caught in the social web despite the clear signs that my party were sending me. It allowed this guy to keep on with his nonsense and further make the game into an unfun, unplayable mess. Hey, you know what would have really helped with this situation? Today's sponsor! This week's videos are sponsored by Hit Point Press and their newest adventure, HUMBLEWOOD Tales, a brand new supplement for D&D 5th edition that takes place in the lush world of HUMBLEWOOD. If you guys have been D&D fans for a bit, you'll know about HUMBLEWOOD. This is a very well-established setting, and HUMBLEWOOD Tales only builds it up further. You can explore the incredible city of Alderheart, a city in the trees, which is under threat by some pretty scary monsters. I mean, this is an adventure for levels 3 through 8. You're not just playing around in the farmlands, talking to fun bird people. You're facing off against pirate mercenaries, a slime king, and gods of shadow and trickery in a nightmarish dreamscape. Look, you guys know how much I love a good hardcore adventure, so you'd think Humblewood wouldn't be my thing, but no. Humblewood, it's got some impressive edge to it. If you want to see where your tale will take you, head down to the description down below where you can pick up the incredible material of Hit Point Press. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. Thank you so much to Hit Point Press for sponsoring today's video. And without further ado, let's get back to class. I know I already mentioned mention this, but when this guy made fun of my, C-list, D-list voice acting, yeah, it bothered me. It sucked as a dude who was DMing my first real story-driven campaign, was putting myself out there to be told to calm down, or that I'm doing a terrible Russian accent, or that I should just stick to my normal voice and just skip over this stuff, because I was really trying to have fun, and I was having fun. When he told me to calm down, I was doing an evil monologue Estrade. I capped it off with a cackling villain laugh. Some of my players even went, ooh, when he just cut me off and said, okay, Crispy, calm down. That hurt a lot. But I just assumed, oh, well, my voice acting must have been bad, and he's probably right. I need to chill out. I'm taking too much spotlight, or whatever, ignoring the fact that this guy was the real spotlight hog all along. I felt disrespected, but I discounted those feelings. But look, if you feel disrespected, it might just be because you are being disrespected. And look, as the Dungeon Master, you're not the lord and master of your party or anything like that. They are free to make jokes about you, to criticize your DMing, but as long as it is all in good faith. This guy wasn't making a gag that made me laugh with him. He was just making fun of me in a way that bummed me out. He wasn't critiquing my voice acting in a way that was helpful. He was just putting me down because, I don't know why. Maybe he was still bitter about me beating him in that debate one time. Look, no matter the reason, he was making me feel awful while playing the game. He was making sessions stressful and crappy. And that should have been a sign that something needs to change. I thought it was my responsibility to endure stuff like that as DM. Like, I'm the leader of this group. I should just man up and keep on going. But hell no, man. Yeah, I'm the Dungeon Master. I'm supposed to handle problems like I said earlier. But at the same time, you're still supposed to be having a good time. You're still supposed to be having fun. Your feelings shouldn't just be cast to the side because you're in this position. If anything, I think they should matter more because as a DM, you work so hard to make these sessions fun. The least your players can do is be nice about it. And this guy was not nice at all. Beyond just disrespecting me and the other players in-game, it was out of game too. Like I said earlier, this guy really loved talking about League of Legends lore, and there were a few times where he would just interrupt my day-to-day life to talk me into being in Dungeon Master mode. Look, your DM probably wants to talk about their D&D game, but there are also times where your DM is, resting, where they want to be left alone, and in that case, the best thing you can do is to follow their wishes and leave them the hell alone. This guy did not care about me taking time to myself. He didn't care about me wanting to take a break from Dungeons and Dragons and just relax. He only cared about me as a Dungeon Master. That was a sign that this guy wasn't really my friend. He just wanted me there so I can make his story for him, so I can create League of Legends fan fiction for him in our D&D game, and that was another sign that there's a big problem. Another sign that I discounted and ignored because, this is just like awkward small talk out of the game. We're not even at the game table. How can this be a problem? Like, no, dude. If anything, the fact that it's away from the game table makes it more of a problem. Again, I already said this, but it is a really important detail that I had never really done this before. Like, yeah, I had tried, done one-shots, stuff like that, but like a real story-driven campaign, long form, with all my friends side by side with me instead of randoms, like, yeah, this is the first time I'm really trying that. And I assumed that all of these problems that I was seeing were just me being misguided because I was brand new. And let me make this clear. This Curse of Strahd game was freaking bad. Like, I was not a good Dungeon Master. I put my characters in roleplay situations that were too intense for their level of roleplay experience, which was 0, by the way. Running a dark, horror-themed campaign for them was just not the play. I put in a bunch of Easter eggs to things I really loved, and these weren't like just me ripping off things I liked. These were supposed to be fun Easter eggs, but the players aren't clones of me. They don't get these things. And me randomly focusing on a Sans cameo. Yeah, Sans from Undertale. I was cringe, okay? What can I say? But yeah, me randomly focusing on a Sans cameo is not cool for them. They don't care. My fights were either way too easy or way too hard. I used music, but I did it really badly, especially compared to how I do it now. It just was... it was a bad campaign, dude. It was not good. But that doesn't mean that I should be damned to deal with a problem player. I was looking at all these mistakes that I was making and assuming, oh, me seeing these issues, that's just another one of my many mistakes that I've got going on. But no, just because I'm making mistakes over here doesn't mean I'm completely wrong in every single thing that I think. It doesn't mean that my feelings don't matter in any way during the game. This guy was still disrespecting me. He was acting like a fool and a nuisance throughout the campaign. Those things were valid, no matter what mistakes I was personally making in this Curse of Strahd game. No matter how cringe I was as a new dungeon master. In the end, it was out-of-game stuff that did it. I learned some information about this guy that I did not like, and I did not want to play with him in my campaign anymore. So did I end up confronting him? No, I didn't, and I do regret that to this day. I didn't want the explosive fight. I didn't want to deal with this guy being bitter at me all over again. I mean, he was angry and mad for months over me beating him in a class debate. Me kicking him from the campaign, God, I couldn't take it. And I do regret that I didn't end up pulling that trigger. But in the end, that's what I ended up choosing. It may have been the wrong choice, may have been the right choice, but it was the choice that I made. We ended up reforming the campaign with new people, and it ended up being a much better experience without this guy present. Lo and behold, who could have seen that coming? He actually did come back. I talked about this on my Tavern Adjacent podcast when I still did solo episodes. He came back to yell at me in Instagram DMs of all things, and also invite me to play Destiny with him, which was kind of weird, but yeah, it was not a good experience having this guy come back years upon years later after I became a D&D YouTuber. He was a problem all the way through. It was just a problem that I refused to see, a problem that festered and got worse until years later it exploded in my face. But I'm kind of glad it did. It's been a while since I got those messages. It's been a while since I've talked about this guy in general, and now I'm on my third full D&D campaign, and it's been a really great time. I've moved on, I've learned my lessons, I've grown as a dungeon master, and I'm a lot better at solving the problems in my D&D game. Hell, apparently some people credit me with solving the problems in their game based on some of the emails I received, so that's awesome. The point is that, like I say all the time, we can always grow. We can choose to be better. Yeah, this guy was a problem player. Yeah, he was the main issue. But I can't control this guy, can I? I can't make him be a better person. I can control me. I can control how I deal with the situation. And back then, I didn't deal with it perfectly. But now, I think I can deal with it a lot better. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed, then if you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy our main channel, where we talk about tea and tales from the TTRPG world, or a video from right here where we talk about some bad TikTok D&D advice. Link in the cards. But before you go, please leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Academy so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment learning to let me know at the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. We will see you all next time. Farewell. Of a man of culture.